Kevin Petersen, Family Matters. How are you?
I'm good.
Must be Thursday.
Must be Thursday, Jay Staples. How are you, sir?
You know, all things considered, I mean, life is amazing. So I'm living a bonus life. Like, I shouldn't have been here a long time. And there's an active addiction when, I often say, like, is it even worth, going on? So I'm certainly not there. And I would say completely on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to active addiction. So always got to remind myself of that gratitude. So how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. It's a beautiful day here in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. It's just gorgeous. And the humidity's starting to climb, so it's definitely summer is a coming.
Man, it's May already. I mean,
oh my God, May 1st, baby.
Oh God. I mean, whatever. I'm just depressed. I mean, I guess I'm not doing so well anymore. Like, see, you just say one thing and you can knock me off my high. Like maybe, now that I think it's May 1st already, holy, whatever it is. But anyway, we do this show try to the best of our ability to do this show every week. Family Matters. We answer questions, try to stump Kevin, Family Whisperer, and kind of just really kind of go into wherever the wind kind of blows us. So keep the questions coming, and we'll move into that. But now we've had, there's a couple of questions. One that's been a couple of weeks old that I kind of but now that I'm able to kind of put it together, and I will just say kind of something that what we were talking about pre-show, but we got some parents, families curious as to, they said, going to lead to a heavy discussion, but do you feel as if, or let's just say you're kind of overall, if I say, we're getting kids on pills much earlier and earlier in life. And so basically in context, these kind of questions are saying, I just feel like we screwed up by putting our 16-year-old or 15-year-old, they're now like 18, 21 years old. They're not doing it. I'll just say for the simplistic terms, blaming kind of addiction issues on early medication use in kids.
Sure.
And your stance around that or kind of viewpoints?
That's a great question. It's one that I deal with every day, and I definitely have thoughts and opinions about it. Let's be super, super clear.
Don't get us canceled or anything. Right?
No. I am not a doctor. I have no medical expertise. I flunked every science class I ever took. Okay.
I flunked every class I took. So.
Yeah, right. Well, me and me both. But other than oceanography, which was taught by a friend of mine's dad, and I loved it. So I can tell you all about earthquakes and stuff like that. But when it comes to the medication stuff, I can tell you what I've seen. In my first 3 years, I worked in a community mental health facility where we took Medicaid, and I was in child and family services. And, I'll tell you my experience, and this is my opinion. The schools would send kids to us with their moms and dads or whatever, and say, he can't sit still. He the list of things, right? Why he was disrupting class, disrupting home, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He needs Adderall or Ritalin. And our psychiatrists were incredibly stingy on that. And they're like, oh, he needs diet, exercise, therapy, maybe some meditation, little yoga, before we start pumping him full of speed. Because when you pump him full of speed, then you got to bring him down. And so what we would see is these kids doing Adderall or whatever the Vyvanse or whatever the stuff was, and then at night having to do Prozac or something to bring themselves down. And I'm talking about 6, 8, 10, 12-year-old kids. I'm not saying all of them. I'm not saying it was wrong or right. I'm just telling you what I have seen. Okay. Does that make them more susceptible to substance abuse? Maybe. Maybe not. I would say I don't have any statistics for that. I don't have any knowledge of that. I think the thing about substance abuse is, so for substance abuse, okay, so let's separate substance abuse and addiction. Okay, so for someone who's going to use because that's what they're used to, absolutely, I can see the correlation, no questions asked. Does that make them an addict or an alcoholic? Well, that's a different story. That's an entirely different world there. And then so the big question that they're really asking is, what's my opinion of it? I definitely think it's overprescribed. I mean, the number of kids that I would be dealing with that, and I it was a societal concept. The teachers were like, he's disrupting the class. I have 30 kids. You got to either medicate him or get him out of here, And then the parents were like, I'm working 2 jobs. I'm a single mom. I can't deal with this. And so it would come to us, and they were like, give him magic pills. And so I would look at these kids and be like, so how much exercise do you get? What sports do you play? They're all video gaming, indoor and eating crap, and that sort of thing. And I'm not saying I have any knowledge or but I just know that when you have kids that are running around outside a lot or doing exercise a lot and exercise and then eating healthier foods, we would just see better results. So that's what I have. As far as the initial question is that, does this make somebody more prone to substance abuse? Oh yeah, sure, totally. But if we want to take it to the next step, does that make them addicts or alcoholics? No, now you're stepping over a line. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I was watching a comic. I think he was a comic or anything like that. But I mean, the point was, he was asked. Basically, the premise was he was asked to be like a supervisor at his like 6-year-old or 8-year-old's nephew's recess or something, and he was talking about the complete difference between the recess when he was a kid compared to what he actually saw was the lack of like I remember one in our class like got a concussion because we always like rushed the doors, and one just so happened the maintenance guy didn't unlock the doors, and so he had a whole group of guys just running out, and the doors were locked, and we pushed him right into the doors. So he actually got a legitimate concussion and actually smashed the window. But no, I mean, I go with that. I mean, like you go out, for me, like you go out and, recess, you get tackled, you get balls thrown at you, you're running around nonstop. I mean, and I've not been on a recess or anything. I hear family stories, but there is definitely, I would say, a lack of kind of a decrease in activity probably in kids nowadays. Not all kids, but I mean, I think there's some, I mean, the unclinical, educated view from my point is there's got to be a correlation to the lack of, the decrease in activity compared to the increase in medication.
Yeah, I mean, and I have to tell you, as much as people want to blame doctors, let me tell you, these parents were like, he needs drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, they were very, they would, and then as they get older, what they find out is the kids that use that stuff get good grades. And so they were like, he needs stuff, he needs whatever, Adderall, et cetera, because, and I've literally had families say, well, we weren't thrilled, but he was getting good grades. And so that was fine. And I'm like, oh my God. Because then when they get older, what do those kids do? They start smoking weed at night, to come down. And so we've created the roller coaster, up, down, and that freaks me out. So I always would rather have somebody exercise, nutrition, meditation, yoga, therapy, and maybe, I mean, I'm not saying no medication, okay, but the other thing about ADD and ADHD, it's not a biological condition. It is a series of 10, there's 10 in the DSM-5, there's like 10 or 12 symptoms. And if you catch a certain number of the symptoms in a certain time frame, you have ADD or ADHD. So a lot of times now, that stuff's readily available on the internet. So these, mom and dad walk the kid into the doctor's office and they're like, this is what's going on. And the doctor's like, oh God, I mean, if I don't prescribe it, they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And this way I can at least monitor it. And so everyone wants to point fingers at the next person. And it's like, okay, I hear you. And I don't disagree that we probably are way over medicated and way, doing stuff that we shouldn't be doing in that ballpark. I thoroughly 1,000% agree with that. And I think, somewhere along the line, somebody has to stand up and say, okay, hold on. Let's do this, and this, and let's try some holistic methodology. Let's get a better nutrition plan. Let's get a better exercise plan. Let's teach these kids, meditation and yoga, and slow their minds down, slow their bodies down, and get them at peace. But that's probably me being incredibly pie in the sky optimistic, and so will that happen? Oh, I doubt it.
Well, I don't think the education or the training or kind of the classes per se or whatever, are there for any of what you just suggested. I will say, yeah, thank you to the Mr. Internet. I mean, all the research and kind of proof that you need to be on medication is thanks to Mr. Internet. But on the flip side, what you all mentioned, things I learned late in my life or valued aspect of my life, I've never stepped foot on a grade school or anything like that, but or even a high school, but I would be willing to bet that those aren't part of education or trainings or anything.
No, and they're constantly pulling back on sports, and especially when we start looking at middle and lower income environments, if you can't pay for it yourself, it's not available, and so there's now we're getting into some deep societal issues. So sticking with the initial question, I think there's definitely there's probably a correlation somewhere, but I also think that, before you stick your kid on that stuff, you should be at least considering some other options.
No. Well, here I am. I'm trying to go viral, and you're shutting me down on these beats. But I'm like, whatever, Kevin. I just see we'll remain a show that no one's
I don't want to be the next guy.
Sports in general, though. Let me just tell you, now I'm reading more and more articles that kids aren't even going to be playing sports for their high schools. They're going to these other club sports basically, and because of all the NIL and money's going down to the high schoolers now. You could see high school sports not even really be going to that high school anymore. So don't give me sports in my jam. You got the brain and health and all the important stuff. I'll break down the sports, but so gold star to she didn't leave her name, but she said she apologized in basically a paragraph about her rambling. I actually think she has two of the most valid questions in the same. So we'll break it down. We'll keep the kind of theme going, but so it's a sister, and they're talking about kind of her brother who has long history in the, I think they're in the 40s or something, long history of substance abuse, alcohol, whatever it may be. She talks about, we came from a family that was, she says, hyper focused on comfort and avoiding suffering. And she's curious because she went the path of stay the F away from it and doesn't do any of it. And her brother is the complete opposite. She kind of just, basically I would paraphrase her as do you see mental health and addiction problems stem from people's lack of avoiding suffering?
Oh, wow. Okay, man, you're going to really.
Yeah. And then she's got another great question.
All right, let me start there. No, one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Do mental health problems stem from people avoiding suffering?
The avoidance, yeah. I mean, do you think that that's kind of the, people's avoidance to suffering?
Well, or let me, the only thing I would change in that statement is suffering. I would say people's avoidance of emotions and feelings altogether.
Okay. Oh, I can relate to that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I actually had a great professor, really great professor, who talked a lot about that. He's like, there's he had like a bell curve, and he was like, the more people try to suppress things, contain things, and hold things in, the worse it gets. And they've actually studied that. So that's actually 1000% true, no questions asked. And I would say that's why it's so important, to talk to a therapist. And I mean, here's the funny thing, right? As a therapist, right? You walk in with your master's degree and man, you are ready to drop bombs of wisdom on people. And, 99% of the time, they just want you to listen to them. That's it. Because they just want someone to hear them, which after a while as a therapist, you realize, oh, that's my job. My job is just to validate you, witness you, and advocate and hear you. And if you want some suggestions, I'm happy to give you some suggestions. I mean, I totally get that. So yeah, absolutely. The more you hold it in, the more you suppress it, the more you contain it, or the more you deny it or force it down, sure, the worse things get, because that stuff always comes out one way or the other. It never, and I would rather have you cry. I would rather have you be mad. I would rather have you be like, kind of good. And then, because I know that you're going to come down, you're going to what we call self-regulate, but when you're constantly forcing everything down and not acknowledging and giving that moment and giving it its acknowledgement, then it's just going to, it's like the, what's the analogy? It's the pot with the boiling, with the lid, right? It just gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. And so you want people to be able to express things, and you want them to be able to say things. And, for 3 years, I worked in an environment where I was going into the ER and evaluating kids that were anywhere from 12 to 18 that were suicidal, homicidal, or psychotic, right? And the law says if you say, I'm going to kill myself, you go to the ER. I mean, that's good law. It should be that way, But I would tell you about 99%, now 90-something% of those kids were not truly suicidal. They just didn't know how to express their emotions and feelings. They hadn't been taught that. They hadn't been taught that when their boyfriend breaks up with them, cutting themselves and freaking out was not the solution. That when mom and dad were fighting or divorcing, or there was disruption in the home, that, their best move wasn't running away and getting wasted. That they had to, but no one was teaching them how to express themselves and talk. Now, there were some people that were truly suicidal. I'm not saying that, but if we put every single kid who's said something like, I'm going to kill myself in a hospital, the schools would be empty, and I get it. When I was a kid, I didn't have a capacity to express myself appropriately and come up with all the really right things to say. So I get it. I totally get it. I think, the important thing, so we're kind of, this is kind of a theme, right? Because these questions aren't so much about this, they're about a societal concept. We're getting some great commentary here by Jennifer Ahern. I'm really interested in going back into that. But, when it comes to, mental health issues getting worse, absolutely, depression, anxiety, or personality disorders or whatever, you got to have somebody to talk it out with. And I have to say, the old thing where people are like, wow, I just talk to my friends. I don't need a therapist. Yeah, your friends aren't qualified to have that conversation. And they're not qualified to be like, I think we need to talk about that more, or you need to talk to a doctor, or, hey, we should discuss this. And that's what a therapist is really there for. It's not, going to a therapist doesn't mean you're crazy, doesn't mean you're cuckoo or nuts or incapable. And there's no shame around it. I love my therapist. I go talk to her and I just am like, and she's really good. And she's like, okay, so here's what I'm seeing. Here are the themes. Let's work on this. I'm like, that's why I'm here, And so that way my lid doesn't pop, and I can get some vision and really get some conceptual good ideas. I had a great therapist back when I was married the first time in Boulder, Colorado. And he was great. And he said to me one time, he's like, Kevin, I just want to let you know, you can come in here every week or every other week and complain about your wife and your sister and your mother and your job. And I'm happy to listen. But if you ever wanted to come up with some strategies of how to deal with that stuff and minimize it, we can do that too. But it's totally your choice. And I was just like, huh? He goes, I just want to let you know I can show you a way out of that. So you don't have to keep coming in. I mean, he goes, I'm happy you're coming here and getting it all off your chest. But if you ever wanted to learn how to disengage from that process, I'd be happy to show you that as well. That was a great therapist. So I don't know if I answered the question.
I think we did our best. I mean, sometimes
there's another piece, right?
So she followed this up with, so in both of your opinions or experience, is recovery about returning to someone that they were before addiction, or is it fundamentally about creating someone new?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is recovery, in our opinions, really about returning to the person we were before addiction, or is it fundamentally about creating someone new?
So the answer is yes. And here's why. The person I was before I got deep into my addiction was actually a good person, and a decent person and a kind, loving. I just couldn't control the drugs and the alcohol. And when the drugs and the alcohol took over, I turned into a different person. And so I think deep down inside every person that struggles with substance abuse or drugs or alcohol or any other, process addictions, whatever, I think deep down inside them is actually a decent, kind, loving human being. They just can't, they can't access that because the drugs and the alcohol get in the way, and it sidetracks them and they start going down a different route, And so that's the answer is yes to both, right? I mean, and what I have found in being sober, as long as I've been sober, is that I am a totally different person than the one that I was, and even the one that I was before. But I think I still think I have some fundamental pieces of that guy who was a really good, kind, loving, decent guy. He just couldn't get there, And I mean, I've had family members and stuff say that is like, hey, I mean, I want you to go back. We want him to go back to the old person. I'm like, yeah, but you really don't. You don't want the old person. You want a newer version of that person. They're like, yeah, you're right. So I would say yes and yes.
Recovery, in my opinion, is about revealing the best version of yourself that you can know possible. The person you seek is already here, already there, quietly, So yeah. I was fascinated, I will say, because my first response is I'm a completely different person today, post recovery principles and so forth like that. Now, I backed off it and through meditation and just kind of thoughts, because I sometimes just illuminate, whatever that word, but I think you're right. I think there's the key aspects of my life before that I grew up with, I think are just being strengthened and communicated differently or whatever it may be. But my first response is I'm a completely different person. And I'm learning, because I looked at, my first thought was how I communicate with family or how I was raised, emotionally numb, and how I'm trying to change the way that I communicate with my brothers, everyone basically. So I see that as completely night and day. But I mean, it had me think, I'll just say that whole, both sides had me thinking for longer than I'm willing to admit. But I think that there's principles or fundamental, whatever, that I was raised with that are ingrained in me. But I certainly do feel like a completely different person post
Yeah. And I've had some really wonderful people say things, like, gosh, I really.
Jennifer, you have incredible amount of information. I wish we could put it all on, but if people looking, just look at the comments, you'll see the comments. So Jennifer, really incredible.
Yeah, this is some great stuff about ADD, ADHD, and I'm 100% with you, Jennifer. I'm fantastic. Thanks. Please come in more often. We do this every week. If you have questions, if your clients have questions, we're here to help. And I also, on the recovery piece, and whoever core is, I really appreciate them participating as well, because I agree. Quiet the mind and the system reveals us. I completely agree. I would tell you that there was part of me that was trying, when I was using and drinking, I think there was a really decent part of me that was trying to win the battle. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
My intentions were always there. I just couldn't follow through. And even when my intentions were good, I couldn't get all the way through. And so, it's that's the battle, right? That's the thing that a lot of people, I think, don't understand about addiction and alcoholism, is that the addict and the alcoholic, they want to be a better person. They desperately want to get out of the trap. They just can't. They just can't. They can't get out. They can't get off the roller coaster, the revolving. The what is it? The carousel, the merry-go-round. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, we didn't necessarily answer the question whether it's, I would say to the person, in like always, I snip this up and send it an email, kind of our response directly to the question. But so I would say that, from my personal experience, is there's certain things pre-recovery that are always going to kind of stay with you, just the way that I was raised and the way that I basically do life, that, I wish, and I'm in the process of changing, but they're always going to kind of be there. I'm still paralyzed with fear. I still use sarcasm as a self-defense mechanism. So, so my amateur view on that is like, recovery isn't going to change who you are, I would say, and you're not going to be this new person. You're going to feel like a new person, I think, in my opinion, but there's still a lot of things that, there's still baggage. Recovery doesn't get rid of your baggage, I guess. That there's still going to be some baggage that you're going to have to deal with, and recovery can't take that away. Would be my response.
100%, but recovery gives you a way of handling it and a way of doing it.
1,000%, yeah.
Where you actually do become a better person, a better version. So So
I like that. So alrighty, Kevin, you worked hard. I'm sweating a little bit too. So that's a sign of a good show, I guess. So
yeah, I think these were great. These were really, and we got comments. Oh my God, this is great. Is there a way we can save Jennifer's comments and kind of go back to those? I don't know. I guess it'll be on my YouTube page, the Chronic Hope Institute. So all this will I'm guessing this will be there, right?
Yeah, I would think that, yeah. You're on, is that, I wonder if it came through I think it went through your Chronic Hope, right?
Yeah. And my LinkedIn, and she was commenting through LinkedIn, and then whoever core is on my, I think that was on my YouTube. So I would suspect those would be on there, but I'll find out, and we'll come back to this. Maybe they'll come back when we come back in 2 weeks, not next week, in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll certainly get to that, and something for you to dissect with Jennifer, because all I see is basically Spanish. So that's an intelligent conversation, and we obviously know who she's directing that to. So if you got any jokes, like, just put AJ, I need your response. But any intelligent questions, dissect that for us and report back to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
All righty, sir. See you in 2 weeks.
Yes, sir. I'll be in Clemson, South Carolina next week to watch my niece Macy Wyman graduate.
Not a big fan of the Clemson orange, but I love Clemson College. But I'm a big color scheme. But anyway, I'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Talk to you later.